Hello and welcome to the Songwriting Idiots Podcast, the show where every month we, that's me and Dan here, write a song in a genre and on a topic decided by you. And today's a special day because Dan, after 2 straight months in Vienna, came to visit me in Munich. How are you?
Hello, sir. I am doing well. My nose is a little bit sore. I had to wear a mask for the 4.5-hour train journey. I just rubbed it into my nose.
Okay. I thought from all the cocaine on the clubs of Munich yesterday night.
I wish. The clubs are all closed. If I'd known that, I would never have come.
Because if Munich and Bavaria are famous for one thing, it's the club scene.
The club scene is massive.
Don't trust anyone if they tell you should go to Berlin. Nope.
Munich's where it's at.
Clearly.
Anyway, Ralf, thank you very much for inviting me here today. It's as you mentioned, the last 2 times we were in Vienna, you're at my place, and now we are in your flat in Munich. So I'm very happy to be here, albeit with a sore nose.
Well, something's got to give.
What can I do? But luckily it is at least the capital of beer, which is very important.
Very much is. And you already enjoyed that, I know.
I did.
But we're going to have some more. It's nice to have you here. If anyone wants to see what it looks like in my living room, we do have a photo up on Instagram. But anyway, before we go into this month, there's one last thing we need to do. Last month, we were both charged with writing a Disney song, I would call it. And it sounded a little bit like this. We've been here since the world began.
I'll build the wall.
Build the wall. Build the wall. Build the wall.
But how do I build the wall? I need some labor that's free. So that was our attempt at dealing with Disney. And if you've listened to that episode, you will have heard Ralf had a few struggles with his Disney song because basically, Ralf, you never really watched any Disney movies or listened to any Disney music.
You like to make it sound like that. I know you're kind of alluring to my sad childhood, but I haven't watched any movies since I was 12 years.
Right. So, I obviously wanted to highlight your poor childhood, but I also wanted to use it as a segue into our genre for this month.
Into your poor childhood.
Right, because our genre for this month is Italo-Dance / Italo-Techno. We're not really sure what to call it. I think they're the same thing.
It might also be Italo-Disco. There are many names. We're going to talk about it a little bit.
We will. And in this month, I was at the distinct disadvantage of never having heard this genre ever before in my life because it never made it outside the borders of basically Central Europe, and I grew up in the UK. So I never had anything to do with this genre. So it was particularly tricky for me. So, Ralf, being from Austria and, also kind of the border to Italy, I'm very curious to hear kind of your take on what Italo-Dance / Techno / Disco is and kind of the history behind it.
Yeah. So I have a personal history with it. Maybe let's start there. It is crazy to imagine, especially, when you grow up in a certain place, your horizon it's small. You don't know much about the rest of the world. And for us, it was the most normal thing that techno, electronic music in the late 90s, early 2000s was Italian. That's what it was. And when you went to any of the clubs in my hometown, and there were 2, they would have played that. And I was reminded of this when we finished the last episode and it became clear that we are going to attempt to do Italo-Dance by a video that Thomas sent me. He's mentioned a lot in this podcast. We should stop
El Patron.
I'm El Patron. He's Don Martin.
He's Don Martin. That's right.
Really. And he sent me a video from, I think it was 2008, when Gabri Ponte, one of the biggest, I would say, single star in that genre, played in Villach in my hometown. And it took me back. It was a weird time, but I was a metalhead as a teenager, so I didn't go there all that much.
So you mentioned Gabri Ponte. as
Yes.
the biggest name in this, or one of the biggest names, and a name I'd never heard of before. And for our listeners that come from anywhere outside of Austria, maybe Germany, maybe, and of course Italy, maybe a name that they've never heard of before.
I'm sure, but you certainly heard his music, which you cannot really say about any other artists in this genre, because Gabri Ponte was part of Eiffel 65 later on. So the Blue and blah blah bam, that was also him, right?
So this blew my mind actually, because being from the UK, we had I'm blue, dam dee dam die.
Not too much. The copyright police.
That's the name of the song. The name of the song sung in the correct way. And they were called Eiffel 65, right? And I presume they were French, being, having Eiffel in their name. But they were some sort of like Italo-Dance super group, right?
Yeah.
I think Gigi D'Agostino was also in there.
No, he was not. Prezioso was in there.
Okay.
If I'm not completely wrong. Who was, I guess, the third biggest name.
Who was the other guy then? Because there are three of them, right?
There are three of them. I don't know who the third person is right now. Gabri Ponte is one of them.
Okay.
I think Prezioso and one third guy.
And a third guy.
Couldn't
okay.
tell you.
And so that I didn't even know that was Italo-Dance. But I was, of course, I knew of that when I was in the UK, but I would never have called it Italo. I would just call it kind of interesting pop.
Yeah,
right?
Which it was, yeah, sure. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So maybe just quickly to go a bit back in history. It's always interesting to do. The genesis of this is actually quite interesting, because Italy was quite famous for its early electro scene, which is something neither of us would ever be able to remember. That we're talking like the late 70s, early 80s. And that was really a time when in other parts of the world, for example, in Germany, Kraftwerk were starting out, or Kraftwerk for our American listeners, I'm not sure. And some others, of course. So I think Moby started around that time, maybe. But Italy was really, really big at that time. They started using what was popular in the 70s disco scene, so especially the drum grooves and parts of the guitar grooves and the whole...
The bass as well, I think.
The bass as well, yeah. The entire disco chick in a way, but without a lot of the pop appeal, and turn it into somewhat early electronic music based almost exclusively on synthesizers and drum machines. And that was something that was quite popular in Europe. So in the early 80s, you would have artists in all over continental Europe, really, in Germany especially, and in Italy, but also in France, that copied that. So that was becoming kind of big. And it was really influential in the mid-80s in the US as well, because that's when house came up, right? Like house is basically from Chicago, early mid-80s. And they also discovered this new, somewhat electronic music coming from Italy mainly. And used the drum beats again to sample it with their kind of keyboard things that they used to do, the key loops. So it was a very influential thing. And it's really hard to then draw a straight line to what we are doing today from there. It's like, okay, those were the foundations that existed in Italy. And then in the 90s came the Eurodance thing, especially in the Netherlands, in Germany.
Never made it to the UK again.
Yep.
I learned all about this when I moved to Austria.
I'm sure some of our listeners know Eurodance, Coco Jumbo, probably the most famous song. And that was a huge thing, especially in the north of the continent. And somehow that spawned a renaissance of electronic music or popular electronic music in Italy. And it became a very weird thing, based somewhat on the 80s predecessors, taking some elements from Eurodance, but being very, very different. And yeah, we already mentioned some of the names. So Gabri Ponte.
Speaking of names, I just checked who the third member of Eiffel 65 is. I'm sure our listeners are on tenterhooks, waiting to find who the third
Please
member.
tell me, is it Giorgio Castiglioni?
No, but it is someone who has the same first letter of their first and last name, Jeffrey J.
Jeffrey J. Beautiful.
Jeffrey J. Not Gigi D'Agostino, but. Well, on the topic of Gigi D'Agostino, because he's, I think, the person that I listened to the most in my research on this. And I remember hearing his music for the first time again when I came to Austria. And honestly, I thought it was pretty cool. It's the music that I would hear in kind of clubs when, you know, it got past 1 a.m. and people wanted to listen to kind of the classics, and they would put on some of his tunes. And I didn't know them, but I felt like I knew them because you could quite happily kind of dance along and sing along. I actually found that pretty cool.
Yeah, especially back in the days. I mean, you came a bit late to the game, obviously, in your, let's say, early 20s. But for us, that was really kind of when we were 12, 13 years old, and we started to give a damn about music, basically. That was really popular in Europe, and it was a cool thing in retrospect. You know, it's not something you hear all that often. It's interesting music. Whoever doesn't know, listen to our Spotify playlist. You'll find it in the show notes. But it is a very unique thing. It's very poppy. It's very melodic. It's very synth-driven, and it's crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's very particular, right?
Yeah,
actually.
Really is.
You know when you hear it.
So, needless to say, it was hard for us. I think we can agree. It certainly was hard for me to do it. But without further ado, let's get into our song section, which everyone is obviously, hopefully, waiting for. Now, it is my honor, since you are visiting, to open your beer. And today we really have a best-of. We have 2 beers that already made it to the show, because that's the 2 beers I always have on stockpile. Especially
they just rotate.
Since lockdown happened, I always have at least 2 crates. One of them is a Giesinger, which I'm going to have, a very nice Munich beer. And then Tegernseer, probably the best classic Bavarian beer.
It's my favorite beer, I think.
And here we go. Number one.
Let's see if the Tegernseer makes a different noise.
Let's see. And it did.
It did.
I'm going to come over.
Oh, yes, you are, sir. Cheers. Here we go. I'm very much looking forward to this. I say that every time. And I mean it, actually. I really do mean it. I do look forward to hearing our songs every time. And I think I'm up first. Is that right this time?
This time, you are indeed first. You are first.
Thank you.
Because I opened.
You did.
It's easy. We shouldn't have beers before the show, should we?
No. The simple things like getting the order right then goes to hell.
Anyway, do tell me a little bit about your song before we listen to it, while I pour my beer.
Very shortly. My song is inspired, I would say, primarily by Mr. Gigi D'Agostino. He is essentially him and Gabry Ponte are the only 2 artists I really listen to in any real depth. So you can, I think, hear very clear influences from them. And my song, now it's important to remind the listeners as well as to what the topic was. The topic of our song had to be an Italo-Dance techno song about the alternatives to milk. Fantastic topic. So my song is called No Cow. Enjoy.
Give
crazy as always. But I think, I mean, you said it before, and we talked about it as well before the podcast. You can clearly hear the influence from Gigi D'Agostino there. Gigi Doc, as we learned, he's called in Italy.
Yeah.
Maybe just some things that really stood out for me there is, and we talked about it before, I planned on using one, I didn't end up doing it, the vocoder in the intro, where, for those people who don't know, you basically can play your voice with a synth. Is that basically what it is?
That's essentially it. Yeah, you record audio, so you record your voice, like you sing, like la 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 la, and it can be even just a straight note like la, and then you use your keyboard, and then it just manipulates it so that your voice plays the notes essentially. And you can make it more or less realistic. So at the beginning of this song, this is the most realistic I could get it. I wanted you to basically have some idea of what I was actually saying.
No idea.
Yeah, it was, and this is as close as I could get it. I was simply repeating the words "no cow."
Well, I mean, at least no message was lost there.
Yeah, and you just play your voice in this with synthy way, and I realized that a lot of them did it. So I thought, well, this podcast is all about us trying out new things and learning new things. So let's try a vocoder for the first time ever.
And it's very much, I mean, it's Gigi, but it's also very much iPhone 65 style, like up, there, that all just vocoder. Yeah, it's really nice. Really liked it. And I think also, especially the beginning of the song is I think, quite strong. It goes straight in, which is quite different to mine, as we're going to hear. But you really have a nice build-up on the synths there. I think you used 3 or 4 different synths.
I think in total I used 4 or 5 actually. Yeah, because you have the ones in the kind of the background that fill in this kind of space, and then you have the lead ones that take over. Very much like rhythm and lead guitar. If you think about it, you have the bass, rhythm, and lead. Very similar to this. You have the bass synth, you have the kind of rhythm synths, and then you have the lead synths.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the first, like when the first leady synth came in, the very small one in the background, this kind of almost piano.
Yeah.
Really nice. It kind of leads you in, and it just grows and grows and gets bigger and bigger. It's I think that's really well done. And also the ending I found hypnotizing.
Which ending do you mean here? Do you mean the kind of refrain?
Yeah, the refrain. Not the synth at the end. I'm not even sure if that would have been needed, but the thing before where you were just basically just going on and on, like no cow, no cow, no cow.
No goat.
No goat. It's just like either you want to go all vegan or you want to kill all animals. I'm not entirely sure. But
Me neither.
And also the lyrics are interesting because you and I told you that before. I'm not sure you realize when writing it that you start by naming all the reasons why it's morally and ethically wrong to drink milk.
It's bovine abuse. Right?
Yeah, it's bovine abuse, and the entire second half of the song you just mention all the problems you actually have from drinking it, that you're just lactose intolerant, and you couldn't care less about the animals.
I just wanted to give people several reasons not to drink milk. We're stealing the golden nectar of the cow, but also it messes up our stomachs quite often as well.
Which beer luckily doesn't.
Luckily not.
Yeah,
luckily not.
Very good. The only one minor criticism I would have is that I was missing some heavy effects on the vocals.
Yeah. So, and I would agree, because I did some delay on the vocals, which you probably heard.
Yeah,
and I think that works really nicely. And I had no idea how to process my kind of main vocal, so I just kind of left it basically as it was. And I think adding some sort of filters to it would have added an extra kind of 10% to the song, I reckon.
Yeah, I think I was what I would expect maybe, and what you hear a lot in these original songs would be almost like a megaphone kind of effect. So like someone shouting through a megaphone on a square or something.
Yeah.
Hardly
distorted.
Quite distorted,
Yeah.
hardly intelligible, and you don't really know what they're saying.
Yeah.
And quite distant as well, but loud.
Yeah.
Loud but distant.
Yeah.
That would have really helped,
Also,
I think.
what you would hear in a club very often that would get people going as well is that kind of noise.
Yeah.
On that refrain part, actually, where I simply repeat "no cow, no goat," etc., I was inspired by a song we've already mentioned, by iPhone 65 and Blue, because actually they simply repeat the same thing for the chorus over and over again, right? Yeah, sure. And I thought, well, if they can do it, then I can basically do it. And then I kind of doubled it with a synth. I was like, actually, this sounds quite cool. Yeah. And it's very weird, actually. You would never do that in a normal song, would you? Like, just end by repeating the same thing over and over again, like a mantra.
Yeah, we talked about it before. I mean, I guess once you think about it, you can come up with some examples, but it's just not very common, right?
No, it's
like
not.
Lou Reed in Perfect Day does it, but it's not something you hear a lot.
No, but what I could imagine is being in a club and people chanting that over and over again.
Also in the, let's call it, it's not really a chorus, but the oat part, that's also something you can chant in a club once they ever reopen.
Once we have a place to chant again.
One really important question that came to mind. Do you or have you ever heard of the term lento violento?
I have heard of the term lento violento, and I'll be curious how that translates, Ralf.
Because that's how I would describe your song. Lento violento is something that I think Gigi D'Agostino invented as a term.
Exactly right.
And it means slow violent. Mm-hmm. And I think that's basically what it's not really actually that slow, but it goes at it moves at a steady but comfortable pace, It's not crazy fast. No. But it certainly is violent.
Yeah. And so when we talk about the tempo of songs, we often talk about beats per minute, right? And what I did was I took the 3 songs that I found that I liked from the playlist that I found, and I tapped on my computer, and it told me what the BPM was, and they were all ones that I liked were between 136 and 140.
Oh.
All of them.
So clearly you went with 138.
I went for 138.
Of course you did. Yeah.
Right in the middle.
It's a classic down move.
It is.
Yeah.
Right in the middle.
You do that. Yeah.
Split the difference. So that's what, without really realizing it, I was clearly listening to lento violento songs.
And what did you start with? What was the first thing you wrote in this?
So the first and I would say hardest part for me was not the lyrics, not the melody, not the structure. Mm-hmm. It was getting the right sounds.
Yeah.
It was finding a sound that I was like, that's it. That is the noise that I want to make. Because in the DAW that I use to make my music,
the software
program, there are hundreds of different synth sounds, and you can manipulate all of them.
What is it? Analysis paralysis, it's called, I think. Like the same thing you have on Netflix. Too many options, and you end up not doing anything.
Yep, sounds exactly right. Yep. Just like me at work. Yeah. So I had so many synth options, and I just found it so hard to choose the right one because it could be it. Or if I changed this a little bit, it was really, really hard to find sounds that I wanted. Once I had them, I was on my way.
Yeah.
And then the second part was the lead melody. Mm-hmm. That came next for me. Along with fairly similar time, just choosing my key because I wanted to get the bass done because I wanted to build my melody off of the obviously the way that the chords progress, and that was driven by the bass.
What key did you end up using?
I was in the key of E major.
That is something that is so, and that any listener can probably just remember in the back of their head. I would never write a song like this in any key like that because there was way too many sharps in the key of E major.
There are a lot.
4. And I could only, I can barely play the piano or the MIDI controller. So I went with G major, which only has 1 sharp, and it's the F sharp, and I know it.
You know it, so it's good to go. Yeah, and that's something that also I thought about. Happy you brought it up because when I watch these guys play in inverted commas, this music live, they sometimes had live synth there. Yeah, and I noticed that they were using a lot of the black keys. So for those of you who don't play the piano, the white keys are kind of the non-sharps, if you like, the natural keys, and then the black keys are the sharps or flats, right? And and this is also something that I've experienced myself whenever I've written music which involves a synth or piano, is that, because I think I'll write it in the key of C, because the key of C is the only key which has none of the black keys.
That's exactly what I would do, or A minor.
Yeah. So you don't have to worry about them. But they sound great on synth. They sound great. And I feel if you don't... it's something about the black keys and synth. They sound really good. And that's why I chose one which has 4 of them in it, because I think it's right. I don't know why, but if I tried to transpose my melody into different keys to see how it sounded, and the fewer black keys that I used, the worse it sounded.
So next time we should probably go with F sharp.
F sharp, yeah.
That is way to go. You only have like the one F natural in there, and the rest is done.
Yeah. Yeah, but an interesting one, right?
Yeah.
I found that the more sharps, the better.
Mm. And also, just for the theory geeks, yes, I know it's not an F natural, it's an E sharp. All right, anything to add from your side, or shall we move on?
My structure was weird, I thought, as well. The fact that there isn't really a chorus and just a refrain, honestly, it was really hard. It is probably the hardest one I found.
Interesting.
Yeah, because structurally and musically, it's probably not the hardest, but just the fact that I had no touching points with this genre. With all other genres we've done, I could hold on to something that I found familiar or new. Reggaeton was at least Despacito, right? Whereas this, I had very little. So it was, and it's also not music I would normally listen to when I'm at home relaxing after a hard day's work.
It's very hard to do.
Put on your yeah, it's not normal, but I certainly learned a lot from it, and learned how to use things like a vocoder and how to manipulate sounds in a different way that I would ever have tried before. So I'm actually happy with how it turned out in the end.
I think you should be. It's very good. It is a club hit. Minus the club.
Minus the club. Damn it. So with that, I think we can move on now to your Italo-Dance techno hit.
Let's call it a hit already.
So before we dive into it, tell us just a little bit about it before we crack on.
Yeah, so my song is in Italian because I thought, why the hell not? We have a little bit of a history on the podcast with Spanish songs, at least, and I used to speak a little bit of Italian. I learned it at school, so I thought, why not? We can maybe talk about the lyrics afterwards a little bit. It's just a little story, and the song is called Moretti.
Ho provato la granola con latte di mandorla, latte di nocciola, tutto vasti soia, niente di piacevole, formaggio con spaghetti, cereali son perfetti, con birra Moretti, con birra Moretti. Stomaco mio amore, per questo sono andato dal dottore. Chiede, hai problemi di cuore? Credo che abbia commesso un errore. Dopo molti giorni e ore me l'ha dato il signor dottore. Un referto molto curioso, sono intollerante al lattosio. Ho provato la granola con latte di mandorla, latte di nocciola, tutto vasti soia, niente di piacevole, formaggio con spaghetti, cereali son perfetti, con birra Moretti. Ho provato la granola con latte di mandorla, latte di nocciola, tutto vasti soia, niente di piacevole, formaggio con spaghetti, cereali son perfetti, con birra Moretti, con birra Moretti. Stomaco mio amore, per questo sono andato dal dottore. dottore, chiede, hai problemi di cuore, credo che abbia commesso un errore. Dopo molti giorni e ore me l'ha dato il signor dottore, un referto molto curioso, sono intollerante al lattosio. Ho provato la granola con latte di mandorla, latte di nocciola, tutto vasti soia, niente di piacevole, formaggio con spaghetti, cereali son perfetti, con birra Moretti. Ho provato la granola con latte di mandorla, latte di nocciola, tutto vasti soia, niente di piacevole, formaggio con spaghetti, cereali son perfetti, con birra Moretti, con birra Moretti.
Wow, I would say a very different kind of song, right?
I think so.
Yeah, and this seems to be a running theme in the podcast, which I'm very happy about because it'd be boring if it was the same song twice, right? And so the thing that really stood out for me in your song were the vocals. Mm-hmm. I thought you absolutely nailed them. Really nailed them. Because that was as we discussed, that was kind of the struggle in my song because I thought I'll just sing it, right? And it didn't really, to me, sound exactly right. But I think you got the vocals nailed on. How did you do it?
Oh, basically, at the beginning I thought, okay, I probably just sing it first and then destroy it afterwards. That was kind of my idea. So I sang it in almost kind of an operatic kind of way. So I was like, "Ho provato la granola." Mm-hmm. And then I used, 7 or 8 different effects on it to completely destroy it. So
7 or 8?
I think so. I think I used an autotune first to bring it to a slightly off-pitch key. So I gave it like -5 hertz or something. Okay. Then I used a compressor, then a delay, then another compressor, then a vinyl scratch thing, another compressor, and then I sent it into reverb.
Okay, yeah, you really messed up your vocal there, didn't
Completely,
you?
yeah. Completely.
It sounds great, though. It really sounds perfect. And it's the kind of vocal that I heard on these tracks. And this kind of lightness behind it comes from that kind of processing, right?
Probably, yeah.
Really, really cool. Staying on the vocals, what on earth are you singing about? For those of us that aren't Italian natives.
Well, the few listeners who are not Italian natives, let me explain it quickly. So, I mean, I guess, as you heard, it's very simple rhymes, and that was important to me. So I always just wanted to rhyme the last word of every line, right? So it's like, fa male al stomaco, mio amore, per questo sono andato dal dottore, hai problemi di cuore, and that's like, and it's a small story. So the verse is, roughly translated, it says, I'm having troubles with my stomach, therefore I went to the doctor.
A running theme, apparently.
A running theme.
In our
running
song.
theme. The doctor asked, do you have a problem with your heart? I think he made a mistake. After many days and hours, I got a reply from the doctor. It was quite surprising. I'm lactose intolerant. And then the entire chorus is basically just naming milks, like alternatives to milk, that I've tried. So I've tried almond milk, I've tried hazelnut, I've tried anything made from soy. But nothing was satisfactory because I like my spaghetti with cheese. And honestly, my cereals are best enjoyed with Birra Moretti, which is a popular Italian beer brand. That's what the name. That's where the name of the song comes from.
I think something we can all relate to.
Yeah, cereals and Birra Moretti. I haven't actually tried it. It's probably awful, but Birra Moretti, if you're listening, we are open to sponsorships.
We are. We certainly are. In the next episode, you hear us opening a Birra Moretti, you will know why.
Oh, that would be great.
So, how did you come up with those lyrics? Did you just kind of sit down and write them one day? Where were you? What were you doing?
I was here at home. Basically, I started again with a melody, as I usually do.
Okay.
So I noodled around the guitar to find a melody, and then I found some chords. And then I thought, okay, I need some sort of lyric to this. And from the beginning, I thought, okay, probably just turn it around and talk about beer. That's very much on brand. Why not do that? Yeah. So that was kind of my plan. And basically what I do and what I would recommend always to do is I thought, okay, what's the story I want to tell in my verse, and what's the story I want to tell in my chorus in like half a sentence. So I was like, okay, verse, I've got problems. I go to the doctor and he tells me I'm lactose intolerant. Chorus, I've tried all these things, but in the end, I don't need any of them. I just drink beer. And then I sat down and put on an Italian rhyme machine of Google. Didn't find a good one. It was hard work because my Italian mainly left me over the last couple of decades. So I couldn't really come up with rhymes myself. But it really didn't take me all that long. So maybe half an hour of looking for words.
Yep.
And then I just put it together.
Okay. So it started again with a melody.
Yes.
Okay. And what about the sounds that you found? Because you've got several synths going on there. Was that a difficult process for you, or was that actually quite straightforward?
Yeah, it's exactly when you mentioned it before, I could relate. It was one of the hardest things to do. Maybe for me, not the hardest thing. We're going to talk about that later, I guess. But I used one plugin and one plugin only, and it is my favorite plugin. It's free. Anyone who produces anything, I can recommend the TL Noisemaker. And it's a crazy synth machine, and it does what it says. It's a noisemaker. It has a couple of presets, and when I say a couple, I mean like 150 or something. And I just went through the list and found a couple, and I used 3 of them in parallel in the same track. So they were just all played through the same MIDI track. And then I had one in addition to that, which was kind of the thing in the build-up, the more piano-sounding one, which was also going on the other track, all in the same plugin. And I sent it into a reverb chamber, like as much as I could.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned just briefly the build-up. That's one thing that I definitely noticed in the song. It builds up and then drops off, and builds up and then drops off and then builds up. It was really fascinating, and it's also something that I would have loved to have done. Actually, it's something that I think these songs tend to do really a lot, isn't it? They do build them up, and it's not the kind of build up that we're used to, where you build it up and then bam, it hits you.
Not like a dubstep or something.
Yeah, with a drop essentially. They build it up into nothing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, that was the one thing. Yeah, build up and then just leave people hanging.
Yeah,
I think that's something they do a lot. And also, maybe just plug it here. We've been in touch with this guy whose book I just read, Friedemann Findeisen. Hi, Friedemann, if you're listening. He wrote this book, Holistic Songwriting, which I just finished, and he talks about this a lot. So I can actually really recommend it. He's talking about a storyline, not in lyrics, but in the music itself. And it really lives from like different levels of hype, how he calls it, like how much is going on, how much energy is there, and then tension and how much anticipation and, that you're kind of waiting for something to happen. And I really tried to play with these elements and also these kind of, the thing that he calls implied tension, when you're just building up like a keyboard in the background, then it just drops out and you're like, oh, something happened. Yeah. Something weird, but there's not more energy. There's less energy. Yeah. But you're more on the edge of your of the seat.
Purely because it's not what you expect.
Yeah. And because there's something noticeably missing. That's at least, that's exactly how he writes it in the book, but it's also how I perceive it. It's when you expect an element to be there and it either isn't there from the beginning or it just drops out. Yeah. It really increases your anticipation because what is going on, right? And
I think we both used it to some degree. Yeah. I dropped the bass drum at some point. Just
Totally. Which is ridiculous. Yeah. Like the bass drum is there from minute 0 to the end of my song. And it's a 4 on the floor, always.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff, yeah. But you can do these kind of things. The classic trick would just be get rid of the hi-hat, which is quite predictable. But it works. We know it works because once it comes back, there we go.
My old friend.
So, that's a lot of the things. And since you were asking, my main challenge wasn't actually that. My main challenge was overcompression.
Okay.
Because every single element needed to get compressed somehow, especially the lyrics, they sounded great. But in the end, there was so much compression and stuff going on that I really couldn't move them up or down or couldn't move them up or increase volume anymore because I would immediately just...
You get the crackling and clipping.
So I would go clipping immediately because there was just too much going on.
Right.
And it was a constant struggle. And that's why I'm not super happy with the drive. The drums are not where they should be, I think. So, yeah, that was my main issue.
Got it. Yeah, but I think that's an important point to raise generally, because the songs that we make and the songs that most people make will never be perfect, actually. Yeah. Right? We do our very best, but there's always going to be something where you're like, I wish we could have done that. But as I often say, there's beauty in simplicity. I often say that. But
work on that merch.
But also, 80% is better than 0%, right? So, and all of our songs are always like that, and the majority of songs are like that, because you're never going to get it perfect.
Yeah, and I guess it might be encouraging to some people when you're listening to our stuff, the kind of, let's call it, quality that I produce. I'm doing with like half a year of experience in the program, and the difference to what you're doing is already huge. And you've used it for many more years, but never really all that.
No, never seriously.
Yeah. So really, without going super crazy, without super expensive equipment, without years of experience, you can make something, and it's gonna get better. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I'm not always feeling like mine are getting better, but I think they probably are. And it's a process, but it's fun along the way, because you can quickly get something. You can get, like marketers would say, a minimum viable product, right? An MVP. You can quickly produce something that will make you happy because it's something you made.
Exactly.
And it's not hard to do, and you go from there.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, on that note, I think we can say goodbye to Italo techno dance.
Not disco. We call it disco all the time. It's not disco. That's the 80s stuff. Let's call it Italo-Dance.
Italo-Dance, yeah, okay.
I guess.
So thank you, Italians, for giving us Italo-Dance. And
any Italians listening, we're thanking you personally. Yeah. We're very sorry you also had to grow up with this.
Yeah. Well, it taught us something, at least.
Yeah, and it is good fun.
And which means now that we say goodbye to Italo-Dance, we can go on to our next genre. So, thank you very much for everyone who's voted over the past month for the genre that Ralf and I will be doing next, and also the lyrical topic that Ralf and I will be doing next. Ralf, would you like to remind the listeners what choices they had this month?
Yeah, I just opened the poll. We don't know the answers yet. The options for the genre, which we're going to start with, were symphonic death metal. And I was kind of begging people to go rock, so maybe this one. But if it didn't, I know our listeners hate me and love you.
I think you can assume that.
We can assume that.
Yeah.
I mean, you are quite likable. I'm El Patron.
Yeah. So, symphonic death metal.
Then we had the very broad thing called medieval.
Medieval, yeah. That's
whatever.
That would be interesting. I'll be watching lots of old films for that, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's see. I guess, film score might be a good way to go. 80s goth rock. So we're talking something like The Cure, as we put in parentheses. And German hip-hop, which I think is a strong contender because people like to hear you rap in German.
They've heard me kind of rap in Spanish.
Honestly, I would be surprised if that didn't win.
Is that where your bet is?
That's what my bet is.
You're going to go for German hip hop. Okay.
Where's your bet?
I think it might be 80s goth rock.
80s goth rock. So are you ready to hear the results?
Ooh, I'm nervous. Okay, let's go for it.
All right.
Drum roll.
We have a winner.
Okay.
With 38.5% of the vote. German hip hop.
German hip hop. Okay, good. No, I'm happy with that. Thank you everyone for forcing me to speak another language again.
So this is going to be the fourth language on this podcast.
Yeah.
We are going quite crazy.
Correct.
You can go Austrian hip hop if you prefer that. That counts.
Thank you very much.
Second place was medieval with 26.9% of the vote. Then we had on third place goth rock. 23% and only 11% for symphonic death metal.
So, proving the theory that no one likes you, Ralf.
No one likes me. No one likes guitar-driven music. We will never, ever have another guitar genre after pop-punk that we decided upon. But actually not, because this month we're going to talk about it a little bit. We have a little different
few more guitar genres
there. Yeah.
Okay, so our German hip-hop song. What are we going to be writing our German hip-hop song about?
We had four options again. It was the UK's response to the COVID-19 pandemic,
Which would be hilarious in German.
Would be good fun. My girlfriend's friends, which is
Dangerous.
dangerous. Every indoor plant I buy dies.
Which is just the truth.
Yep. And giving feedback to your housemate's bad poetry.
Which is also very
Which
difficult.
is a great. We have a winner.
Is it a clear winner?
It is a clear winner with 34.6% of
So
the vote.
similar to the winner of the music poll.
It was 38.5
Yeah.
for the music, 34 here. And it is the UK's response to the COVID pandemic.
Okay.
In German.
German hip hop.
German hip-hop about Boris Johnson.
Second place?
And what an Arschloch he is. Second place with quite close. It was a close call. So we had 34.6 for that topic, and we have 30.8 for every indoor plant up by dice.
That was a good one.
Then a bit behind, 23% for my girlfriend's friends, and only 11% for giving feedback to your housemate's bad poetry. Even that was arguably my favorite, which again proves
that you are just a big weirdo.
I'm a big weirdo. No one likes me. No one likes me. Yeah.
So thank you everyone who voted, and also thank you everybody who's suggested new genres and new topics. We get them every month, and Ralf and I are always very excited to see what people have come up with for strange, weird, and wonderful genres in the previous month.
And do keep them coming, because
Please.
we are slowly but surely not running out, but we would have to repeat some older ones. So highly encouraged. Go there, songwritingidiots.com/vote, and cast your vote or suggestions.
When you vote, you should also just send in the genre that first comes to your mind that we haven't done yet.
Or even 2 or 3. No one cares.
Exactly right. And they always give us a little giggle. And genres and topics, I mean, both are very much appreciated.
Yeah. So, and we sat down right before recording this, and we chose 4 genres and 4 topics again. Dan, would you tell our listeners what the options are this month?
I certainly will. So, the options we have for this month: music. We have ska, country.
Oh, I love country.
Indie synth pop, and blues.
That's to my liking. I mean, we chose it, but yeah, that's up my alley.
So I would say country and blues are up your alley. Indie synth pop maybe slightly more
That's
up
quite
my
yours.
my
Yep,
alley.
I would say so.
And ska probably also slightly.
Yeah,
that
that would be more. Yeah, so if we know it's not going to be country or blues, then
And with 11% of the vote.
thanks, Thomas. But
And now the topics.
The topics.
Here we go. And these are great. Number 1, your aunt's obsession with Croc shoes. Number 2, watching a movie with someone who's read the book first. Always annoying. Number 3, climate change. It's a big one.
oh, yeah,
Climate change.
not a small one.
And number 4, being a Nigerian prince trying to share his wealth. Likely with a long-lost relative, I guess.
So I guess we can safely say we have some good options here. Please go to our website, songwritingidiots.com/vote, to cast your vote and to submit new topics. And until then, we still have now maybe 4 weeks max to write a hip-hop song about the UK's COVID response. So that should be quite interesting. But that basically does it for today, for this episode. Some things, wherever you listen to this show, please give us a follow or whatever the app calls you to do. Follow, subscribe, whatever. That really does help us out.
Much appreciated. And of course, follow us on Instagram at Songwriting Idiots.
You can download both the songs from this show and all the other songs we ever wrote and recorded as MP3s from our website. That's songwritingidiots.com/songs. And you can also listen to some Italo-Techno or Italo-Dance or whatever on Spotify. And the link to our playlist that we put together is going to be in the show notes.
So thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you for hosting, Ralf, for the first time ever.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. We're going to go out, get some Bavarian beers. I assume we do have an alcohol ban from 11 p.m. So we should get going.
So we'll say goodbye and we look forward to seeing you next month where you will hear our German hip-hop songs about the UK's response to the COVID pandemic. Until then, see you later.
See you then.
Bye.